Now, on the other side of the ball, Seattle had some trouble getting going. And to me, mostly came down to two factors. One, a very talented D-line going up against what was essentially 5 backups by halfway through the second quarter. And two, difficulty getting into rhythm because the defense was so dominant. Because for as bad as the Seahawks scoring defense had been coming in, the offense had been that good. They were 4th worst in points allowed, but they were 4th in points scored. Obviously, what they got from the O was good enough last night, but did the anemic stat line give you any cause for concern going forward?
Not really. I think we know what this offense is more so than maybe we know what this defense is, because the offense is pretty consistent with what we had last year, right? It's pretty much most of the same guys, other than the offensive line. So I think you're kind of going to know what you're going to get from this offense. They're not going to be world beaters. They're not going to be scoring 30 points a game every night like the 49ers do, but most days they're going to put up enough points to win. And I thought last night, Geno played pretty well. I thought his escape and the touchdown pass to DK, that was, I mean, my son even mentioned, he was like, that was like vintage Russell there. That was like pocket collapsing, escape to the right, throw on the run, a freaking dime into the corner of the end zone to DK. I mean, that was vintage Russ right there. And I thought he was fine. I mean, the game stat line would have looked a lot worse had that deflected pass by Thibodeau been caught and taken the other way, and then we'd be talking about a different game there, certainly. So there's things that Geno needed to improve on, but I think we're in pretty good hands, at least in the short run, with Geno Smith. He's a playoff caliber quarterback. Is he a Super Bowl caliber quarterback? I think only if you get everything in place. If that defense really, if all those guys really get to the potential that we think they can get to all at the same time, that's probably the only way that this offense can get them to the Super Bowl. But it's definitely good enough to be, in scoring. What were they last year? Like 6th, something like 5th, 6th, 7th in scoring. Something. I mean, I don't know why they couldn't do that again this year.
Totally. They've got more firepower this year. And, it certainly wasn't Geno's best box score, but I think that's as fired up as I've ever seen him.
Yeah, no kidding.
I said in the article last night, he had a passer rating of 95.8, but a fuck you rating of 158.3.
yeah, I did. The perfect FU rating, right?
Yeah. Because in 20 years, I will remember him getting rolled up on, and we can talk about whether that was a dirty hit or not. I didn't really think that it was, but I can see why Geno felt that it was. But the fact that he had to hobble all the way over to the Seahawks sideline and then turn around and go 1-on-11 with the Giants defensive huddle, fingers in the faces, until the rest of the team realized what was going on and got over there to have his back. I was like, okay. All right, Geno.
No, I love that. I love that about Geno. He's got a quiet intensity, right? He's not loud and boisterous and, look at me. But when you piss him off, he's going to let you know that he's pissed off. And I think the dudes love him. I mean, I really do. I think they loved him when he was a backup quarterback. And so that it's so funny because the only people in the world that weren't concerned about Geno Smith being the starting quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks last year were the dudes of the VMAC. Yeah. Those were the only people in the world that were like, sweet, we got this. And everybody else was like, oh crap, this is awful.
I'm guilty of thinking that was just lip service that they had to say, yeah, of course, Geno is our guy and we love him, whatever.
Right.
No, they love
him.
And he seems really comfortable in understanding the role of being a quarterback beyond just playing quarterback.
No, that's exactly right. And I just love the renaissance. I mean, it's almost unheard of. People have used the Jim Plunkett comparison, but I mean, there's not a lot, man. There are not a lot of guys in the history of this league that go almost double-digit years as a backup and a failed starter backup to starter. I mean, you got the Kurt Warner situation where he never had the chance to show you what he had. Geno had the chance to show you what he had, but there's a little bit of Zach Wilson situation too there. Where maybe Geno was just in a Zach Wilson situation and he needed to get to a place that wasn't a freaking debacle like the New York Jets, and to be able to show, get some good coaching, be able to show what he's all about. And, we're seeing that with Geno, and who knows, maybe we'll see it with Zach Wilson if he ever gets out of that hellhole.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, the other examples, I was also trying to think of comparisons for Geno, and really the guys that I could think of, to your point, they weren't guys who started, failed, and then were backups for a long time. I was thinking like Steve Young and Tony Romo and Aaron Rodgers, who sat for a long time. But once they became the starters, they were the starter going forward.
Steve Young's not a bad comp because Steve Young sucked in Tampa.
That's
but
true.
The reason Steve Young sucked in Tampa, he didn't have Bill Walsh, Mike Holmgren coaching him. He had, roll over your coach of the year at Tampa. Mm-hmm. And it was a really bad situation. But at least you saw, I remember, I can still, in my mind's eye, think about the Steve Young in a creamsicle jersey, like running 40, 50 yards for touchdowns. And so you're like, you kind of knew, it's like, all right, dude, this has got, maybe he's Steve Young, maybe he's Daniel Jones. Maybe Daniel Jones is Steve Young, and if Daniel Jones went to Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, maybe he'd turn into Steve Young.
Yeah, I actually don't hate that. I don't hate that. I think one thing too, and I probably should have given this a little bit more credence when I was writing about the game last night. I think that a lot of Geno's stats kind of being watered down last night had to do with the fact that he couldn't move after that hit, and the team knew that and called the offense accordingly. Because one of the things that really helps Geno stand out, and that really every quarterback who's really good in the NFL is capable of doing, is it's not even the scrambles, it's not the rushing yards, it's the ability to navigate a moving pocket, set your feet and throw. And you mentioned that Kayvon Thibodeau pass breakup that almost got taken in the house right before the half. That was the first play after the injury, because Geno didn't go out right away. There was a timeout. Right. Geno stayed in the game for one play, and they called a 0-step drop back, one read pass. So he didn't even have the option of checking away from that. Thibodeau beat Curran and was just there, and he kind of pump faked. He's like, I have to make this throw.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm giving him a little bit of a pass on that. But after that, we saw Drew Lock. And last night I wrote that I love Drew Lock because he has fantastic vibes. But he has fantastic vibes in the way that an untrained golden retriever has fantastic vibes. Like he's really fun, but you wouldn't leave him in the house all by himself because you're going to come home to destroyed furniture and a half-eaten tub of sour cream and a big vet bill hanging over your head. But he was in there for that one drive, and we got the full experience. He had the scramble for the first down. He missed a wide open Jacson Smith and Jigba 20 yards downfield. And then he had the perfect pass to Noah Fant for what was almost the touchdown. I thought it was great to see them get a touchdown on the one drive that he was in there. But stepping back, if Geno were to get hurt, and if you were to miss 3, 4, 5 games, what's your confidence level in Drew Lock? Not as, necessarily compared to starting quarterbacks in the league, but as a backup.
I think he's one of the top backup quarterbacks in the NFL, and I think he's probably better than 4 or 5 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So I have pretty good confidence, especially if this defense continues to play this type of ball where they're making things happen instead of just trying to make field goals happen and win games 20-17. But I think Drew Lock, can you get? My goal for a backup quarterback has always been, can you get me 2-2 in 4 games, right?
Yes.
And Geno failed to do that 2 years ago. He got us 1-3 in 4 games instead of 2-2 in 4 games. And that's what even made me more skeptical of Geno being the starting quarterback, because I thought we saw a pretty good, stretch of time where he was the starter. And I was like, I don't think this is going to be enough. And maybe the problem was, Geno hadn't had time taking starters reps. He hadn't had a training camp as the starter. And that's kind of all he needed to be. He was kind of thrust into the situation instead of being, having months to prepare. We're like, okay, Geno, you're the guy. But, I think your comment as a person that has had a yellow lab before, I think your comment about Drew Lock is apt. You take the yellow lab outside, chuck the frisbee, chuck the ball. You're like, dude, my dog's badass, man. He's really cool looking. Take him to the park. All the girls are like, yeah, you got a sweet looking dog, dude. And then you take him back home.
That's exactly what he is.
And the SOB's got your remote in his freaking teeth and saying, yeah, what are you going to do now? So It's crazy, but yeah, I've had that experience, and we will, if Geno ever were to go down for the month, we would have the DLE, man. We'd have the Drew Lock experience, and it'd probably be a lot of like the Fernando Rodney experience, man. It'd just be like, whoa, let's hold on and ride this puppy.
Good Lord.
Yeah, totally.